Hi there, it's your boy Hagai Kasule. Welcome back, LCGM fam. Let's chat global matters. I'll start today's video by thanking everyone here, my LCGM fam, for the love, support, and encouragement that you've shown me thus far. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, I can't thank you enough. I'm truly grateful. If you're here and you're watching, but you've not yet subscribed, please subscribe to join the LCGM fam. Without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. Today's topic is something that intrigues me: education. Let me take you a little back to school. In sociology as a discipline, education is seen as a very important institution for society. The functionalist theory in sociology argues that through education, individuals acquire the knowledge and therefore skills needed to become functional members of society. On the other hand, the conflict theory sees education as a vehicle that continues the inequalities seen in society. For this video, however, as you might have seen by the title, I want to discuss the COVID-19 pandemic in relation to education, and I will focus on the challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic has posed on the education system. But before I go any further, I send my sincerest condolences to all those who have lost their loved ones due to the pandemic or other related illnesses. May their souls rest in peace. And I pray that you're comforted by the outpouring of God's unending love. It is at this point that I urge all of us to take seriously the standard operating procedures, or the SOPs as many of us prefer to call them. I mean, wear a mask while in public spaces, wash your hands frequently with soap or sanitize, avoid crowded places, and above all, stay at home if possible. I repeat, stay at home if possible. I mean, if you don't have anywhere to go, why move out? Just stay at home, as simple as that. These are the only ways we shall be able to beat this deadly virus and get our lives back to normal. I mean, aren't you tired? Just stay home. At this point in time, I'm pretty sure that most of you are aware of the fact that a novel coronavirus known as COVID-19 was discovered in December 2019 in Wuhan City in China. Soon after, the General Director of the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a pandemic after assessments concluded of the rapid spread and severity of the deadly virus across the globe.
We're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic. Pandemic is not a word to use lightly or carelessly. It's a word that, if misused, can cause unreasonable fear or unjustified acceptance that the fight is over, leading to unnecessary suffering and death.
Also, social distancing was announced as a means of curbing the spread of the pandemic. At this point, I'll take some time to explain the difference that exists between an epidemic and a pandemic, because I'm aware many people actually confuse the two terms. The World Health Organization defines a pandemic as an outbreak of a disease that occurs over a wide geographical area and affects an exceptionally high proportion of the population. Whereas an epidemic affects a large number of people in a community, country, or region, a pandemic, on the other hand, spreads over multiple countries or continents. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, we've evidenced the global physical closure of businesses, sports activities, and education institutions including schools, colleges, and universities. This was aimed at slowing down the spread of COVID-19 and perhaps combating it. Now, did this strategy work or it did not? I'll leave that question for you to answer. As we speak, the global coronavirus confirmed infections stand at over 193 million cases, with over 13 million current infections, 4 million fatalities, and over 175 million recoveries. These figures clearly show that COVID-19 is still far from being over, and the emergence of new variants that present themselves as more deadly even makes the situation more worrying.
Oh my God!
While different countries are at different points in their COVID-19 infection rates, it is estimated that globally, 1.38 billion children are out of the classroom due to the pandemic. As a result, education has dramatically changed to online learning, whereby teaching and learning is undertaken remotely using digital platforms. In spite of being a better option to no schooling, the sudden switch to online learning or digital instruction may have led to substandard results. Why? Because teachers, learners, and schools had to unexpectedly adjust to a new situation. And for the rest of the video, I'll talk about the challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic placed on online learning. The first one being the lack of requirements. Online learning has made the shift from face-to-face learning to the use of devices of various sorts to support this learning. These devices range from phones, computers, newspapers, radios, television sets, among others. Of course, for effective online learning, first and fundamentally, it requires that these devices exist. I'll invite a good friend of mine to chat to us how the lack of devices has made online learning for many students or learners hard and stressful. Ms Damalie, please, you're welcome.
Thank you, Simon, for bringing up such an interesting topic. Looking at COVID-19 and the educational sector, or the effects of COVID-19 on online learning. That's something everyone should be interested in. For me, I believe the struggle or the pandemic in general is not about to come to an end in Africa until we've been able to vaccinate everyone or even put better health structures in place. COVID-19 will forever be here in Africa. So we need to devise means of adapting and getting along with the whole, situation. And to be much more specific in the educational sector, we need to devise means of bringing everyone on board, making sure that people are not left behind. And for this to work, we need to make sure that rural communities in particular are supported to be able to, embrace this entire online learning. By this, I mean put up structures in place, aid them with devices to be able to access classes, support them and all that. And for me, I believe to a bigger extent, the non-existence of learning gadgets to aid online learning, particularly for poor households, has also deterred a lot of students from continuing with their education. The pandemic also, just like the pandemic also came with a lot of effects. Parents lost their jobs. Obviously, there were increases in levels of poverty, and generally surviving became hard. So we have situations where parents who were able to afford or even pay for their kids' school fees cannot do that anymore. So it is important for our governments in place or even our leadership structures to devise ways of supporting these households, devise ways of supporting these children by providing them with online learning gadgets, laptops, tabs, phones, to be able to continue with their education. No, obviously there are situations where governments have come out to create campaigns and strategies geared towards helping people or children academic wise, but most of these promises haven't been fulfilled. In Uganda in particular, I remember at the start of the lockdown, the government came out to see how they're going to give out radios and tabs to children, especially in the local communities. But up until today, 2021, I still don't know if that was possible. In fact, I checked online. I think they were able to distribute to only a specific people. A few people were able to receive those radios. So I feel like the pandemic should be a wake-up call for governments and all to act up. I mean, it's not a time to politicize everything or politic or even thrive on empty political promises. But can we be able to work for the people and make sure that people are not left behind, especially those who are less privileged? In the educational sector, can we put up structures to help children? Can we better pay? Can we give better pay to our teachers to support our children online? Can we work on that? Yes, put up realistic measures in place to make sure that things run smoothly. And obviously, through this, we can make online learning a success.
Thank you very much, Ms Damalie, for that submission. Now, moving on is the lack of experience for using these devices. You will realize that prior to the pandemic, many children and young people spent their time online. However, this time was heavily spent on social activities, playing games, browsing or seeking information, as well as accessing their email. Less time was actually spent on educational activities such as doing schoolwork or communicating with their teachers and fellow students. As such, as students transitioned to online learning, they did so without any practice or experience to learn well online. That transition also necessitated them to shift their device use habits from leisure to studying. You'll also find out that in many households, the parents themselves or the caretakers did not know how to use these devices for learning. So they could also not support their children or learners on how to use these devices to enhance their learning online. Now, who do you blame? The parents don't know how to use the devices. The children don't know how to use the devices for educational activities, for making the whole experience, cumbersome and dreadful for both parties. For teachers, in many schools, especially public schools, there has not been professional development programs to train teachers on how to use computers. And in instances where these programs have been there, teachers have been hesitant to attend. Now, this is primarily because teachers or schools never considered online teaching until the pandemic forced them to do so. As a result, teachers were compelled to come up with a variety of options on the fly, from assigning daily or weekly coursework that students had to turn in online to full classes via Zoom and a range of other approaches in between. We can expect that some of these strategies launched during the COVID-19 pandemic did not yield optimal results. In fact, it can be argued that some of these strategies rather yielded more challenges, like the high stress levels recorded among many learners. Another challenge that I think many of us can resonate with is the conducive learning environment. Now, remote learning or online learning requires that learners ignore the distractions they're faced with at home. But I'm sure that we're all aware that at home, there are quite a number of distractions. I mean, the television programs that, sometimes can catch your attention, to siblings fighting, having to attend to house chores. The situation is even more demanding if you're the older one in the household. So such distractions made the whole experience for learners quite challenging. The other challenge to me, which I think is the gravest of all, is the issue of the digital divide. And shortly, I'll be inviting Ms Damalie again to give us her views on how the digital divide made the learning experience for very many learners between and within countries challenging. But before I invite her, what do we mean by the term digital divide? The digital divide has generally been defined as the gap that exists in accessing technology due to issues around socioeconomic status, race, and/or gender. Other scholars define digital divide as the patterns of unequal access to information technology based on income, race, ethnicity, gender, age, and geographical location. I need to let you know that there appears to be a huge digital divide between learners who are deprived of basic facilities like the internet to access online classes. It's at this point that I'll invite Ms Damalie to give us her thoughts on how students in many parts of the world have experienced online learning given this digital divide. Ms Damalie, please, you're welcome.
Moving on, the digital divide. So every segment of the population comprises of people who are at a social and economic disadvantage, whereby affording different tools like the internet becomes a financial issue. In fact, it's a big issue. And also, this has been worsened by the pandemic, where parents juggling health and work problems have been less able to provide digital tools like data bundles, laptops, phones for their kids to continue with online learning. Obviously, the experience has been different in developed countries and less economically developed countries. In most economically developed countries, governments have been able to support this whole strategy. They put up measures in place to make sure that kids continue with online learning, which hasn't been the case in um, less economically developed countries. Every family is fighting for their own, everyone is struggling individually, so it's definitely hard and tough. And recent data has revealed that as many as 360 million youngsters lack access to the internet. With already a huge gap in education, the unequal distribution of online learning definitely speaks volumes of the many injustices that low income families and less economically developed countries at large have to put up with. So, online learning during the pandemic has remained rather widely available to thousands of privileged, wealthy families in countries. And by countries, I mean more economically developed countries. It has rather benefited the rich as opposed to the poor. People who have the money, the power, the ability to enroll um, learners and to afford online studying in general are the only minority who have benefited out of it. And so, in many low income families or households where parents lost jobs, as well as in countries where internet accessibility remains a major challenge, getting learners enrolled or even attending online classes amidst the pandemic has been very challenging. It still continues as a big problem. And this also takes me back to my previous initial point where I said it's high time for governments, especially African governments, to come to terms with the whole pandemic, adapt to it, and put up structures in place to support online learning. Yeah.
Thank you once again, Ms Damalie, for that submission. It was such an insightful one. For me, I would rather that we integrate both face-to-face interactions with online learning. This actually seemed to work well at my university, which is the University of Cape Town, where for one of my modules, we would have Zoom classes together with the face-to-face interactions. And therefore, I would think that after critical assessment, priority to face-to-face learning or interactions should be given to students that do not have a conducive learning environment at home, lack internet access, or devices to support online learning. I feel like this can help to narrow the now wide education inequality gap, as well as reduce the high school dropout rates that have been reported. Lastly is the issue of the whole child development. For children, going to school is not all about learning, reading, and numeracy. It is also about developing the social and emotional skills that are critical to succeeding in life. Sociologists say that these skills are developed through the socialization process. As children socialize with other children, or as they interact with their teachers, they're able to develop or build their social and emotional skills. However, the closure of schools eliminated these very important aspects of school beyond academic activity, such as the development that occurs through personal relationships among students and between students and teachers, after school activities that support children's mental and emotional well-being, skills development, and a sense of routine. I would therefore urge parents to find creative ways of developing these skills in their children. because the lack of these skills also partly explains the high mental problems that have been reported among students or young people during the pandemic. Alright, I've come to the end of this video, and for those of you who have made it thus far, thank you very much. Let me know your thoughts, your experiences about the topic in the comment section down below. I also thank you, Ms Damalie, for your contribution, for your insightful submissions to the topic. Thank you very much. Hope to see you all in the next video. Bye!